Hello, hello, and welcome to Temple of the False Spot, where our decks, they're not optimized, but our plays, they're sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
Today, we're going to talk about a couple things.
It's like, how do you play Magic when you're not playing Magic?
Yeah, there's a game going on at the table you're sitting at, but you're currently not doing it. So that's going to be the first question of the night is, what do we do when it's not our turn? I struggle with this a lot. When we're hanging out, we're playing Magic, we're playing Commander, whatever. I pass the turn and I immediately want to start talking to somebody. I want to go grab a piece of pizza. I want to catch up with my friends, which is all great. It's all in the fun of the reason for the gathering.
This is why we're there. This is why we're there. I love a great game of Magic, but for me, and I've always said this, for me, Magic is it's the old school poker night. You always hear about your parents and or grandparents who would have their poker night where they would all, they meet up with their buddies and they play poker through the night. And nobody's really...
Grab a couple of cigars and some whiskey.
Some cigars, some whiskey, a couple of brews, and just sit there and play poker. And I always like to think, yeah, they're playing poker. Of course they are. Because they didn't have Magic cards. They just didn't know any better. If they'd had Magic cards, they would have been playing with Magic cards. That, for me, is generally what Magic's about. So, naturally, when it's not my turn, I want to chat. I want to find out what happened with Andy this week. These are my friends. These are the people that I enjoy spending time with, and I want to know how things are going. So
you get caught up in talking. I get caught up in talking, and then all of a sudden it's our turn again, and we're sitting there, and we look at our cards, and we're like, "Oh my gosh, there's a game going on." So there's always that delicate balance of actually playing Magic and playing a game. What I always struggle with is and I know for a fact you struggle with this is figuring out what to do during this time.
I don't know what you're talking about. I never have a problem with this. Never, not even once.
Never? Oh,
never.
Come on. Well, now you're making me look mean. But, it comes back to your turn. You're just kind of staring at your hand, trying to figure out your next move because you didn't anticipate it. And that's the big thing that if you're not doing it, you got to start doing it a little bit. And with every one of my points I'm going to make, it's going to always come back to, but balance it with some chit chat. If you're sitting around with three of your buddies playing some Commander, just have a good time, chill out, but also get ready for your turn.
I've always looked at it like this. I mean, when you're playing Commander with your friends, yeah, you want to talk, you want to chat, but you don't do that during your turn because it's inconsiderate. Because it means that everybody else is waiting for you to finish your turn, so the next person can take their turn. So it's fairly easy to see why on your turn you should not be participating in conversations that don't involve the game or the game state in some way. You're moving the game forward, because that's something that Commander always struggles with, is games that last too long. And a big reason why a lot of these games last too long is because there's too many of us who are busy chatting with friends, and then suddenly, oh, it's my turn. And then they start to look at the board to see what's happened since their last turn, because they've paid no attention to what's going on. And that's bad. And I say they, I mean me. Because while I was joking with Andy, I am terrible with this. As someone who regularly hosts or regularly hosted Commander games pre-COVID, quite often, especially in the first game of the night, as soon as it's not my turn, cards get dropped on the table. I'm up out of my chair. Let's get the oven ready for pizza. Let's get some food prepped, or the things you need to do to be the host. At the start of the night. So It isn't until the second game when I feel like I'm actually I'm at the table for the entirety of a round. So
if we make it to a second game. And to call you out a bit as well, 9 times out of 10, we'll be sitting there chatting as we do. when it's not our turns. And somebody will go, wait, whose turn is it? 9 times out of 10, it's Bruce. But you know what? I don't think any of us hold it against him. Because why would you? We're there to play a game. We're there to be with each other.
Well,
and
the point I was making before, in that there's a lot of chit chat going on between, and then when it's your turn, you don't do the chit chat because that's impolite, because you're holding up the game. Well, not paying any attention to the game state until it's your turn is just as bad. And I am, as Andy put it, I am more guilty of this than most. Simply put, everybody, once you've played your turn, it's one thing to engage, you want to engage in conversation, but you should be paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
Obviously, most decks out there have some sort of interaction. Paying no attention at all means that the instants in your hand, well, they're overpriced sorceries, because you're only ever playing them on your turn because you're not paying any attention at all. Or you understand that this is a deck where I need to pay attention all the time. And so you're paying attention all the time. I don't really want to get into deck types and how to run that. I just wanted to talk about how to move things along a little better. And the easiest, most obvious way to do that is pay some attention to what's going on when it's not your turn. Even if I don't have a way to interact, make it look like you could. That's just sound strategy. If you've got mana up, you could always do something. There's always something that could happen that you could respond to if you have mana up and at least one card in hand. They don't need to know what card it is. They don't need to know if you can do something. As long as they believe it, that's out there, and it's going to improve your game strategy, and it'll improve your enjoyment of the game. However, it will also mean that when it comes time for your turn to come around, you're already going to understand the board state, so at least you're not going to be like, okay, so what's new? What did you play last turn? What did you play? This is, very basic.
Yeah.
At the very basics, pay attention to what's going on as the board state goes around.
I'd say kind of along those lines, too, as basic as paying attention is, my next point is just prepare yourself a general sequence. There's so many times that I get to my turn and I'm just like, all right, I guess I can play these cards, but I don't really think about the sequence. I just kind of throw them down. I'm like, that could have been better this way. That mixed with this idea that when it becomes your turn, with that general sequence in mind, look at what has changed. If you haven't paid 100% attention, something's changed that you don't realize that could be, a big play for you.
Honestly, I know you're getting there. I think your notes really hit it on the head. Think about the possibilities. You built your deck. You have some idea as to what the overall goal is for your deck. Now, some are more linear, some are more open, but even with an open a deck that has all sorts of possibilities, you've got the 7 cards at the start of the game. Based on those 7 cards, you have a pretty good idea of what you're aiming for in the future. Where 5 turns from now, what you'd like to play in 5 turns. Obviously, this can change as you draw cards, but otherwise, I think you're fine. It at least starts you into the future.
Yeah.
And if you've got the that overall strategy in mind, then it just makes sense to go that way.
It's so funny you mention that, because I feel like, and I think this just generally comes with the quick paced anxiety that I have, where so many times during a game, I forget that I built the deck. I know what's in it. I know what I was intending to do with certain cards, putting it in. And I think that it's like a perfect metaphor for what I'm missing during trying to plan out things in my head. Is I know why I chose these cards. I know what they do. But so often I just I'm like, all right, these 7 cards that I have in my hand, this is what I got. And I just forget what is there.
Along that line, it's really interesting, because I can see I've had games where I was playing my Krond deck. Now, for those of you who don't know who Krond is, go look him up. Krond. I'm not really going to go into it any farther, other than to say it's a 6-mana legendary creature. My deck revolves around getting him into play. So my deck revolves around getting a 6-mana legendary creature out.
6 colored mana.
6 colored mana. Yeah, this isn't even just 6.
White, 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 green, green, green.
If you're not paying attention to the long game while playing with Krond, because the long game is to get him out and start smashing heads. That's the long game. If you're not paying attention to that and you happen to draw, a mass removal card or whatever, well, suddenly your game is warping around this mass removal card, and suddenly you're playing an entire game around that rather than around the whole idea of getting Krond out and doing its thing. Like, okay, well, that's not what you built the deck for. So your long game is not making any sense, and it just means that you've got a whole, as you wait your turn, you're thinking about your possibilities. Well, you're thinking about the wrong possibilities. It's just not. It doesn't make any sense to go that route. It's the same with Grenzo. My Grenzo Dungeon Master deck. I know what I want to do with this card, so I should be spending all of my time being very focused on figuring out ways or doing whatever it takes to flip as many cards off the bottom of my graveyard or at the bottom of my library as possible with Grenzo. Now, that strategy in itself can change a little bit depending on what cards I have in hand. Maybe it means that I'm aiming to get that Cryptghast out as fast as possible. Maybe it means that I've got some mana rocks that need to hit the table as quickly as possible. Whatever it is, when the overall goal is to make it so that Grenzo is as effective as possible, and I'm acting to keep that in mind all the time, the game's going to be more fun, and it also means that that's what I should be thinking about as the table progresses. You got to think about the long game. Don't just think about, I have 5 cards in hand. I have 2 mana on the table. Therefore, I can play this card. Well, that's great, but does that make sense in the long game to play that card and tap out? And, while sure, on turn 2, the play probably is play that card. Once you get up to turn 6, suddenly you can play most of the cards in your hand. But does that make sense to do that? And then you start looking at the rest of the board state to make your decisions. So, again, this is all things that you should be doing before it's your turn, not waiting until it's your turn to make that move. So...
yeah, absolutely. The last thing I have written here under this overall point, are we enjoying each other's company? I think it's so easy to get caught up in playing the game that you do overcommit to, like, not even blocking each other out, but like being so invested in like trying to play the best you can, which, sometimes you really need to. Sometimes you really want to you want to win. You want to have these huge plays without any sort of misplay. And so often, especially lately, I've been having these games where like I'm sitting there just like my fingers are just like digging into my knees, just like I'm frustrated, I'm, quiet, kind of just getting like mad at the other players because, either my deck's not working or their deck is too powerful. And, that could be a case of we didn't communicate well enough of how strong the decks are, or it could be just like I'm having an off day. But I think when it comes down to it, we see each other once a week. So I don't care if people play, powerful decks every once in a while. I mean, my Teza deck, I can sometimes straddle that line of too powerful. That sometimes I just forget that, we're all friends here. We love playing this game together. And sometimes you just need to just take a deep breath, forget about what's going on outside of the game, play the game, and enjoy each other's company. And I just know too often I have gotten in my own head and just like been done on Thursday night and been like, well, time to I don't know, take a bath or something, just kind of de-stress for a hot minute before I head off to bed. But you know, it comes down to, are we enjoying each other's company? And I think the time to reflect on that is when it's not your turn.
Yeah, I agree.
Good.
The one last part here.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we doing when it's not our turn? Make sure you communicate that it's not your turn.
Yes.
The one of that famous question in most Commander games. So whose turn is it? Often comes down to, well, oh, I didn't know you'd finished.
Yeah.
So it's two players who each think the other person is taking their turn, and nobody's doing anything. Be sure to communicate that your turn is over. I ran into one group, and they did. I guess they had issues with this that were significant enough that somebody said, "Okay, fine, here," and it was. I forget what they told me it was. It was some kind of a disc. I don't remember if it was a big silver dollar or just a token or whatever. The conch. I don't care what it is. But they would pass that around the table. So literally, when it was the end of the turn, you reached up, you grabbed this thing and clunked it down on the next guy's table. There's no questioning whose turn it is when that hits. I mean, okay, well, it definitely must be my turn. And if you don't pass it on, then it's still your turn. So I thought that was a great idea.
That is
and
a great
honestly,
idea.
if your group is having any sort of issues like that, you can do that as well. And it doesn't have to be something as ridiculous as a conch or whatever. It can be something maybe a little less dramatic, like a massive copy of the Statue of Liberty. Or maybe it could be just, something really, really subtle. So it's not, so dominant on the table, like a 24-head candlestick. Or maybe something, maybe even a little less than that. It could be, something, say, as small as a child's...
As a child.
As a small child. Or, although the children move, and then, that doesn't work.
It's like plane chase.
As a child's paper mache volcano, and you just push that from person to person, or maybe it could just be a small coin, but whatever. It something that people recognize that when it gets passed, it's now that person's turn. So
yeah, it's funny how often the solution to most Magic the Gathering issues that people have is just communication.
Yeah.
And like open communication, not just like being, passive aggressive or, sharp with people. Just being like, hey, it's your turn.
Right.
Here you go. And the flip side of that coin is sometimes I play far too fast. But we'll talk about that right after a brief break for our sponsor.
This episode of Temple of the False Pod is brought to you by Anger.
Without a doubt, one of the best ways to speed up your board is with a little bit of anger. Unfortunately, anger's hardly useful in its active state. You're better off dumping it to prime up your new creatures. Anger will help you more if you just let it go.
Get anger in your bin and go! And now, back to you.
All right, we're back. So, as I was saying before break, I have this. It's the same problem, but it's the opposite problem. I play my turn way too fast. It gets to my turn. Sometimes I have some plays already like sequenced in my mind. I'm like, all right, I'll do this and this and this, and I don't take stock of what's going on. And then I end my turn and I'm like, oh, I should have done these things. I missed these triggers. I should have done it in this order. It happens to all of us all of the time. But me especially. When I am trying to, I guess, slow down, my first thought is, what are the possibilities? What are the possibilities for my turn, for like what I can do, regardless of the board state? What do I want to do? And then what is stopping me? What does everyone else's board look like? Does the blue player have mana up? And they're like, your target would be a real good target for a counter. Or, you want to get... This is a thing that I've been struggling with is, I want to get my, like, big creature out. But, somebody has their Eldrazi out. So you know that there's going to be a Wrath coming to get that out of the way. There's all these possibilities in this complex game we like to call Magic the Gathering that sometimes I just like, I don't even consider some of the possibilities, and you need to think about that. You need to think about, like, well, what's going to happen if I do this? How are people going to react? Are people going to react? And there was a third thing I was going to say, and it slipped my mind.
I will say, though, that, a lot of what you're describing here really fits with what you're doing when it's not your turn.
Oh, yes.
When you say think about the possibilities, that's exactly what you want to be doing. As someone, I tend to process information slowly. I'm the guy who comes up... I'm great. I'll come up with 15 comebacks for your witty remark. They'll be 15 minutes later, and I'll have plenty of them when it doesn't matter. So if I'm not paying attention throughout everybody else's turn, when it comes to my turn, I'm then forced to try and process everything that's changed, come up with what I believe is the best course of action, enact it, consider the results, and move on. Well, all the more reason to be paying attention to all of this stuff otherwise. And honestly, even if you are responding, even if you're someone who can respond quickly to the situation, having the extra time to think about the possibilities just makes sense.
It is astonishing how opposite you and I are in that aspect. I'm so like, all right, gonna do this and this and this and this, and then I think about, like, oh, but like I could have, that was dumb. And you're so, I guess, calculated. Given if we gave the same amount of thought into our turn leading up to our turn,
right? I
think you and I have such disparate ways of thinking about our turn that I just get so excited from the first possibility that I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do that, or like the first like synergy I see, I'm like, I'm doing that. And I don't slow down to think about the other, like, wide array of, like, these synergies could go so many ways.
Right. And I, on the other hand, take forever, consider all of the various possibilities, mull it over, make the play, and yet still come to the wrong decision. So while you and I might play differently, we both end up in the same place, which is the wrong decision. It's just you get there faster than I do.
Oh yeah, I'm living life on the edge, life in the fast lane. Yeah, I mean, it's a curse, Bruce.
It's an alternative playstyle, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I think along with the same kind of idea that, like, you have to think about what the possibilities are, slowing down generally will help you as well with, if you do, I mean, we have made those wrong decisions, made the wrong play, misplayed perhaps. Slowing down ultimately will help you be less salty, if only because you are playing the better plays, but also like you're taking the time, you're breathing, you're like understanding the board state a little better. You're not just reacting. So I think I don't know if you know this, Bruce, but I tend to get a little salty sometimes.
What? No.
Yeah, right?
No.
Yeah. So I rarely, assess the board for counters, and then when it happens, I'm so caught off guard that I'm like, oh my gosh, they countered my thing. My impending powerful doom thing that, they saw as a threat, which I should be honored. I should be honored that they wasted their counter on me. But I get salty. And if I just slowed down, I don't think that would be an issue.
I think what happens, at least what I have found, is quite often when stuff like that, when that sort of thing happens, a lot of times when I slow down, I look at the situation and then I decide whether or not to make that play. And quite often, I'm not asking myself, how salty am I going to be if this doesn't work? I'm asking myself, what is the likelihood of this working? What are the chances that the board is going to let me do this? And then and then you run on that. Well, it's okay, so how many cards in hand do my opponents have, and how much mana do they have up? Because obviously those are big predictors in whether they're going to stop you or whether they even can. Because once you know that they can't stop you, then it's not even an option as to whether they think it's a threat or not. There's nothing they can do. As soon as if the table's tapped out, for the most part, you've got pretty much free reign to do what you want. So you can take advantage of those situations. However, there's plenty of times, most of the time, when somebody could do something. So you start to weigh your options and think about the likelihood of that happening. And, does it make sense to wait? Does it make sense to wait another turn? Is that one turn around the board going to make all of the difference in the effectiveness of the card that you're holding? You start to look at these sort of options. And, it's going to make you a better player. And it's also going to make you less salty when you play the spell, because you've decided, if I wait any longer, this just isn't going to be worth it anymore. Another turn could mean death. Another turn could mean that this creature that I'm about to play gets one less attack. However you look at it, you decide it's got to go now. And you look around the board and you think to yourself, what I'm about to do is going to draw attention and they're going to try and stop it. What are the odds? And you see 3 other players with 5 cards in hand each, and they each have 7 mana open. So you're playing this at that point with the full expectation that you're going to tap the mana, put it on the table, and before the end of your turn, that thing's going to be sitting in a graveyard, or it's going to be exiled, or it's going to be bounced back to your hand, or whatever the result. You fully expect that somehow they're going to nullify that. But you went into it knowing that that's still your best option. Maybe you've rationalized it out at about a 20% likelihood of success, but it's still the best play, so you did it. Well, you're a lot less likely to be salty about it.
Yeah.
If you know that that's what you're walking into, than if you're like, this is definitely my best play, and go and just do it without considering how they may be responding to what you're doing. And this is all about thinking about the possibilities. And in this case, it's not just the possibilities in your hand, in your deck. It's the possibilities of your opponents as well. So,
yeah, I have trouble even once I get to that point of like slowing down and like understanding the possibilities and kind of what's the likelihood. I then get stuck on like, is it worth it? I think it's it's tough because the ultimate thing is they're thinking the same thing in reverse, where it's just like, would it be worth it to counter it? Would it be worth it to waste my murder on XYZ? So like, you're thinking about their thoughts, and they're thinking about what the possibilities are for you. So I always get stuck on that step, and then I either just kind of wait, and then it's too late, or I just hurry up and get my turn done, and then before I know it, I don't have anything left anymore because, well,
you burned your resources.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I always get stuck on that part where I never think not only how likely is it, but if it did happen, is it worth burning this spell to get that counter out or get that removal out? And that kind of comes with the sequencing as well, where it's like, well, if I put this less threatening thing out now to like bait out that whatever counter removal, etc., to then get that bigger threat out. And man, this game, it's so complicated. But yeah, I mean, it's this push and pull of, speeding up the process of the night, but slowing down my turns so that I can think, but I'm not wasting everyone's time by not paying attention during not my turn. And that's not that. I feel like that ends up coming off as a dig to you, but like, you're hosting, you're doing other things. You're not just like, I mean, sometimes we are just goofing off.
Yeah, but it's not really a dig. It's right. Simply put, I take too much time on my turns because I get lost in thought as far as thinking about possibilities. Mm-hmm. Because you want to think about possibilities, but you don't want those thoughts to then trail off into the secondary, third, fourth, fifth, into an endless string of what ifs, to the point where it's like, okay, well, now stop a second. You've now worked out that this is a bad play because they could do A and B and then C. Like, whoa, wait a second. What makes what makes me think that that's actually going to happen? So you need to stop and just say to yourself, that's just silly. You want to extrapolate and consider possibilities, but the possibility is I could win the lottery tomorrow if I buy a ticket. That's a possibility. Is it really one that I should be considering? No, of course not. Oh. That's ridiculous.
Right,
The odds are almost zero. So the same with Magic. If the possibility is, well, what if they have these 3 cards out of their deck? Then in combination, those 3 cards could just destroy me. And I'm like, well, I need to stop and not do that because it's ridiculous. What are the odds they're going to have those 3 cards? Sure. Maybe if they're tutoring, maybe if we've reached the end of the game and they've drawn, 45, 50 cards, then those odds are much better. But they have to have those cards. They have to play them out. They have to actually see the game state in the exact same way you do and realize that they've got to do that exact thing. That's my problem during a turn. I get way too involved in the what ifs and what could happen, when I need to just, look at my hand, know what the long game is. Okay, how can I get to that long game based on what I've got in hand and what I can do from here? So look at your hand, look at the board state, consider your mana, boom, make your play. And then live with that, and then monitor the board as it goes around. So it's not like I'm saying, slow down is a bad thing.
Right.
You should. You do want to consider possibilities. I tend to take it too far, and then I get lost in a stream of what ifs. And if I'm not processing things as fast as I should be, well, then I end up putting down what I think that I have provided was a measured, excellent solution, but never once considered the most obvious possibility. You know,
Yeah.
like I played this creature. Do you not remember so and so just put a Swords to Plowshares back in their hand from the graveyard? Like you can take a wild guess what it's going to be. You know, where that Swords is going to get used. If you had just waited or played something a little less aggressive, they would likely play that Swords against something else in the next turn, and then you can go ahead and play your big ugly and go that route. But that's more a failing of my own, and I tend to get lost in my thoughts with that. So,
yeah, I mean, I literally suffer from anxiety.
Yeah.
Period. So when I play Magic, I'm in this constant battle in my head of like, all right, I gotta slow down, I gotta take this turn, and then it gets to my turn, I'm like, oh my god, it's my turn, I gotta go, and then I do it, and I'm like, ah, crap, I did it again.
Right.
Or I'm like, you know, on my crap that night, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do this, and then this, and I don't generally take it too slow, but it's just that I struggle with that slowing down, that I get so wrapped up in all right, gotta go, that I just forget that we're playing a game.
Right.
Just playing a game. It's a game. It's what am I saying? What am I saying, Bruce?
You lost me. I got lost in my thoughts.
I think that's like, yeah, we're two sides of the same coin, where it's just like you gotta choose one, and then sometimes you're the other side. And this is what I'm trying to say. It's all about trying to better yourself, either as a person or as a player, and you'll never be done. The pros struggle with this, I'm sure, because everyone struggles with this. Whether you are taking the game too fast, whether you're taking your turn too slow, there's always something you're doing wrong. That'll be the first thing I tell you about anybody who plays Magic, is that they think you're doing something wrong. And you know what? Frankly, as long as you're doing it with your friends and you're having fun, you're not doing anything wrong. You're learning. You're taking things away from each game. You're either going a little slower, you're going a little faster. This is all cheesy, but
Basically what we're saying, to sum up the entire podcast in less than a minute, think about your friends. These are the people that you're here playing with. Be considerate. So consider your turn before it's your turn, because you want to get the turn to go around faster, because everybody likes playing Magic, not watching it. That's not fair to say, but you understand what I mean. We all want to be actively playing the game. Many of us don't get a lot of time to do that. So you want to be considerate to your friends and give them every opportunity to play. So this means pay attention, consider the options, and play accordingly. We also want the games to be fun for us too. So keep that in mind. And in doing that, paying attention throughout the course of the game, considering your options, considering the likelihood of those options coming through, and then playing accordingly will make the game more fun for you, and it will likely make the game more fun for your opponents. Your friends are going to enjoy the game a lot more if they know that, that they can rely on you to play, if not optimally, but to play well. Nobody wants to win a game when you're just simply missing an obvious onboard trick for 5 turns in a row. I mean, if they're excited to win that because you just didn't see the onboard play that often, then it's like, okay, so I didn't really win. That's what it starts to feel like to me, and I know it feels that way to a lot of other people as well. So just keep all that in mind. That's all we're saying. Just enjoy the game, enjoy your friends, and let's just keep this game moving. And whether it's your turn or someone else's turn, let's keep that flow going.
Keep that flow going. But I think that is the perfect point to end on. Let's wrap this up. I'm Andy. You can find me on Twitter and Twitch at AndyWeekend.
I'm Bruce. You can find me on Twitter at Manaburned.
And we are Temple of False Pod, where our decks, they're not optimized. But our plays sure as heck are fun. You can find us at Twitter and Instagram at FalsePodMTG. And we hope you guys have a great night. And we'll see you next time.
Bye!
Hey everyone, Andy here. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Temple of the False Pod. Just a few housekeeping things here at the end of the show. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, pretty much wherever you can find podcasts. Subscribe and give us a review. It really helps out the show. And it'll show us what you like about our podcast. Also, we've got a Twitter and an Instagram. Our handle is FalsePodMTG, all one word. So be sure to follow us. Feel free to reach out to us there or drop us an email at falsepodmtg@gmail.com and tell us your favorite magic-related story. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you again to you and to Bruce. He's Manaburned on Twitter, and I'm Andy Weekend on Twitter and Twitch. We're Temple of the False Pod, where our decks aren't optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. Have a great night, and may your fifth land be the temple.